Hey everyone, and welcome to the sixth video in the XDC Report, where we'll go through the latest news and updates in XDC's engineering. My name is Atharva, and I'll be your host for this web series. For the agenda of this video, we'll first talk about why we even need something like double validation in the first place. We'll also explore what single validation is, which is what most proof-of-stake blockchains use today, and understand why double validation is a more superior alternative to it. Then, we'll do a bit of a deep dive into understanding how both single and double validation work under the hood, so you guys will be able to see for yourselves why double validation is more effective. So in the last video, we spoke about masternodes. These are the nodes that have the authority to seal the blocks in the XDC blockchain. So how do we build mechanisms into the blockchain protocol itself that will decrease the likelihood of 51% attacks? Well, one of these ways is to use double validation for each block that is created before adding it to the blockchain. This is such a simple yet effective way to prevent many attacks. It is also one thing that differentiates XDC's blockchain from a lot of other proof-of-stake blockchains. Most current blockchains currently running proof-of-stake use single validation of blocks before adding them to the blockchain. You'll see in just a sec why this puts them at a disadvantage and why validating each block twice is very, very powerful. So looking at this image, we can see that it explains what single validation is and looking at the various scenarios in what can happen if a block is singly validated. So in single validation, each master node sequentially takes its turns to create a block. So the next master node in the sequence then validates the new block. In this image, we can say that M1 is the master node creating the block. Now if M1 is an honest node, then it will create a valid block and add it to the blockchain. So this won't create any problems for the network. But now let's assume that M1 is an attacker and wants to bring down the network. So there are two cases that arise. The first case on the left is where M2, which is the master node validating the block created by M1, is an honest node. In that case, it will just reject the block and create a new valid block. And this cycle will keep repeating. But what if the node validating the created block is also dishonest? That is when the second figure on the right will illustrate our case. So in that case, M2 will see that an invalid block has been created by M1. And because M1 and M2 are colluding to attack the network, then M2 will actually accept the bad block even though it's invalid. This will add the bad block to the blockchain. This makes it quite easy to attack the blockchain actually. So there needs to be a better way to safeguard the blockchain without making validation a process which is very complex and time consuming for the network. And there's an elegant solution to this, and that's called double validation. In double validation, two nodes need to validate the block apart from the node that made it. The image here explains this perfectly. In double validation, master node 1 creates a block and signs it. Then, the next master node in the order will just validate and sign the block. It doesn't add it to the blockchain just yet. Finally, a third master node checks to see if the block is valid and has two signatures. Only if both the conditions are satisfied, then the third master node adds the block to the blockchain. So let's see how this is more secure than single validation. Again, we assume that the master node creating the block is dishonest. So in the first case, which is on the left, if the second master node is honest, then it simply won't sign the block. Then master node 3 will see that the block doesn't have two signatures, so it will reject that block and create a new block. But the next case on the right is where things get a bit more interesting. Again, we assume that the first master node has created an invalid block. Now, if the second master node is colluding with the first master node, it will sign the invalid block. Then the block comes to the third master node. And this is where we can assume that the third master node is honest. So it sees the block has two signatures, but it also sees that the block is invalid. So it still rejects the block even though it had two signatures and it creates a new one. This is how double validation is able to protect the network. Just on a side note, we assume that the third master node is honest because the probability of having three master nodes in a row to be dishonest is extremely low. This is because master nodes are selected randomly among the pool of nodes. So this is how double validation strengthens the consistency of the blockchain and makes it harder to disrupt than traditional proof-of-stake blockchains that use single validation. So that's all for this video, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Until then, this is Atharva signing off. Catch you guys in the next one.